All right. It is the bloody Set of Six podcast with Clarkey and Ozza. Clarkey champion. I've said it.
You do it
I've
every
said
week.
champion. I've done it. I do it every week. Clarkey, my friend, how are you doing today? Not champion.
It's a bit better. Oh, a little bit flat straight off a 12-hour shift, but hopefully keep up the energy for the podcast and hopefully make it an enjoyable experience for all those that are viewing.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you fall asleep, I won't be able to see. I'll just be able to hear you snore. So I'll have to try and carry this thing. So don't die on me just yet. Are you ready to get into some topics?
Absolutely.
Of course. We got some signing news up first. The first topic we are talking about is James Roberts to the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Now, today, a bit of a funny story with this one. You know how we love to get news out there straight away for you guys. I saw this one get released. I think I saw the picture South Sydney put up on their Facebook, and I was in the middle of a class at uni. So here I am, one hand under the table trying to look up. He was talking about our assignments here, trying to make this thumbnail for the Roberts news, and then writing a little thing at the top. I couldn't really go into too much detail with that today. Sorry, guys. Anyway, we're talking about it here. Had to get it out there. James Roberts to the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Worst kept secret in rugby league? Possibly. Look, this was more a matter of when, not if, to me. Talks around it have sort of gone down the past week or so. However, he's just sort of been signed out of the blue. But, you know, it's come in good timing. I believe it was Latrell Mitchell came out and said that he wasn't going to be signing with South Sydney, which, big surprise there. But, yeah, they've got their man Roberts. Good move, do you reckon?
Yeah, good move on all parties. I mean, good move for Roberts, good move for the Broncos, good move by the Rabbitohs, but probably the best move by Wayne Bennett. I mean, the rumour was there. We all knew it was set to happen. It just made so much sense. But then he comes out with quotes like, he will not be in a Rabbitohs jersey this year or next. Here's one. It starts with you guys. He's referring to the media, sitting in the coffee rooms and thinking, what am I going to make up today? Stuff like that. He really did hide this with a lot of deceit. And I'd have to assume that was intentional. But more on a positive note, we'll look at it from each sort of club. So for the Broncos, right now there's two huge names off contract next year, which means they are currently eligible to negotiate with rival clubs. One has already fielded offers larger in Sydney. I believe the Bulldogs have fielded about $700K for Corey Oates a year. And we know almost every club would be interested in Verte Pangai Jr. based on his, I guess, potential alone. So with Roberts gone now, we know Katoni Staggs slots right into that centre spot. If not, Shibasaki does. If not, Jack Bird does. They don't need to chase another centre replacement. So his money goes directly into, hopefully for the Broncos' sake, re-signing both of those players there.
Yeah.
For the Rabbitohs, the only really concern over their ability to win the premiership at this stage was they were lacking a strike centre. In the next fortnight, James Roberts will be getting accustomed on that right side, and Braden Burns will return from a hamstring injury on the left side. I think we're set to see the Rabbitohs probably become the minor premiers and sit at the top of the table there, depending on how they perform in Origin. Obviously, Cook and Walker are pretty influential, but you'd have to agree with that, right? With Roberts, they should be the minor premiers.
Or maybe not minor premiers. I'm saying one or two. For me, I can't really count out the Roosters yet. I mean, they need to get another couple of losses, but South's looking really good right now. In the post that I put up last night, it was which two teams do you think will be in the grand final? I had Roosters and Souths. So either way, I think South Sydney will be there at the end of the season. Just on Roberts, though, I do like the signing as well. I would have said a few weeks ago when the rumours sort of started that, you know, it would hinder the development of, you know, young players coming through. I thought Corey Allen, my boy Corey Allen, of course, was going to be, moulded into the next GI in the centres. However, now it is looking more and more like he will eventually take that fullback role on a full-time basis, possibly from Alex Johnston. So there's probably not too much of a worry there. And of course, Corey Allen can play on the wing as well if need be. James Roberts, he doesn't necessarily provide as much power I would say, on the wing, in the centres as GI, although he's got that speed, that lightning fast speed.
And I think that really benefits the Rabbitohs attack also, because we see Cody Walker take the ball directly to the line. And if the outside defender there is thinking, I can't let James Roberts get the ball, if he gets a bit of space on me, I'm not going to be able to catch him, then it's a one-on-one with Cody Walker. And he does win a lot of those one-on-one circumstances because he is so explosive and dynamic. And then we go to their other half. I would say, without a doubt, Adam Reynolds has the best short kicking game in the competition. I'm not sure if I can back that up statistically, but as far as my opinion is concerned, he is the best short kicker. He's not going to have Alex Johnston, one of the fastest fullbacks, just screaming through now on that right-hand side. He's also going to have James Roberts, which makes him very dangerous.
Yeah, well, just especially on Walker and Cook as well.
Yep.
I'd argue that them two with James Roberts possibly make South Sydney the quickest side in the NRL. I can imagine a quick dart from dummy half from Damien Cook. He's away. Cody Walker can always keep up with him. Walker will be there to take the ball, possibly take it to the line, give the ball to Roberts, and before the defence can even turn around, he's gone. They are now, to me, the quickest side in the NRL, and that is really going to put defences on the back foot.
Yeah.
And I can see a fair few tries coming out of Roberts for the rest of the year. I know he was playing in reserve grade. He has been playing in reserve grade for Brisbane, and there are people I've seen online, not liking this move, but there's not much to not like about it. I'd argue the reason why Roberts was sort of dropped down to reserve grade is that he did have some nagging injuries. But the thing was as well, the Broncos just were not in a good place when he was first dropped. Anthony Seibold was trying to make some moves to try and get something to work, and he was one of those casualties. So I believe Roberts getting away from that, it's looking better now, but what was a toxic Brisbane Broncos environment, and definitely one that was toxic for him, because it didn't look like he'd be playing first grade anytime soon.
No, not at all.
To now go to a premiership contender and be guaranteed that starting spot, that changes your whole mindset. So, I don't think we'll see too much poor form coming out of James Roberts for the rest of this season.
No, and one more note on each team there. You touched on Cook. I actually hadn't considered that yet. We know Cook loves a short side raid. Imagine him scooting out a dummy half, and if you're the centre, you can't push up on him. As soon as you push in, he's going to get the ball to Jimmy Roberts, and then it's all over once the Jet gets in open space. So that opens up more opportunities for Cook, and in turn, we just know how dangerous his running game is. For the Broncos side of things here, what I think happened here was, obviously that photo got released of him passed out drunk, and I don't think it was coincidence that he came back from injury. He might have played one other game, but more or less, since that photo was released, he was dropped. So you can look at that as the probable reason he was dropped. And on a more less likely scale, we saw the pressure mounting on Anthony Seibold through the media. So by him blooding younger players and playing Katoni Staggs there and Shibasaki there, etc., it's less pressure on him, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean.
It gives him a little bit more of an excuse. I don't think that's the reason. It's less probable. I think the most probable is the drunk photo that was released. And perhaps maybe his work ethic. I mean, we don't see what goes on behind doors. The media will tell us what we want to believe, and unfortunately, that's the way it is. We'll end up believing it. But the man we haven't spoke about is the man himself. What does this mean for Jimmy Roberts? And for me, like you said a little bit earlier, you touched on briefly, this is the fresh start he needed. I know it's a former club that he's been sacked from before, but the big difference this time is he is under Wayne Bennett again. He's played his best football under Wayne Bennett. He was a New South Wales rep under Wayne Bennett. He will play some good footy again under Wayne Bennett.
Yeah, so just to add, for Robert specifically, he is contracted to, I believe, the end of 2021. Now, I don't know exactly how old he will be there. I'm on my phone now. I'm trying to get his profile up on, if I can get to it. I'm trying to get his profile up.
So end of 2021, was it?
Yeah, end of 2021. I'm trying to see if he's been added to the South Sydney roster.
He wouldn't have just yet, but Wikipedia...
He is. He's been added.
Oh, awesome.
Yep. So, born in 93. I got to do some quick maths here. It doesn't say his age.
26.
He's 26. Sorry, I didn't do maths for the last 2 years of high school, guys. Anyway, 26. Look, at the end of that, he'll be 29 for an NRL player. That's pretty much their prime right there. So, it looks like a really good move for Jimmy. I actually thought he might have been a bit older than that. Anyway, with all maths out of the way, have you got anything else to say on the James Roberts topic before we move on?
I like it a lot.
Like it a lot. Beautiful. Now we go to the second part of our first tackle. So the second tackle is coming in, and that man is Jared Hargraves, possibly making that tackle in a Penrith Panthers jersey. Now, I believe this move won't be effective immediate if it does happen. We're more looking towards 2020. Mm-hmm. Now, I spoke to my father, who is a Penrith fan. He's given me the tick of approval. He says that he would really like to see Jared Hargraves at Penrith because he'd give them a bit of urgency in a forward pack that has been lacking it so far this season. He also said he'd like to see Russell Packer in a Penrith Panthers jersey. However, we'll get to him in a minute, but not necessarily for Penrith, unfortunately. And I'd have to agree. Jared Hargraves, he screams work ethic, I'd say, especially coming from that Sydney Roosters system. He screams effort, and that's what the Penrith forward pack has been lacking. Except for maybe, I'd say, James Tarmo has looked dangerous at times for Penrith. And I need to give a shout out to Hame Saleh coming off the bench for Penrith. He's looked pretty good too. Yeah. And, the young blokes that have come in, such as Martin and off the top of my head, I think, has Hetherington had a couple of games. I know that the young blokes have been putting in an effort for Penrith, but leaders...
I don't believe Hetherington has actually played a game of first grade this year. I could be wrong.
This year. I know one of them's Liam Martin that really impressed me.
Yeah, he's playing good.
Else, just trying to think of the top of my head. Anyway, I could be thinking of no one. But the leaders aren't leading at Penrith. They are getting shown up by these young guys, except for maybe James Tarmo. So I like this move. I think it makes sense in a rebuilding Penrith side. I say that with air quotes because it's a bit hard to believe they need to rebuild with the roster that they have. Yeah. What do you make of this deal? Do you like it? I was a bit surprised by it, but do you like it? Do you think it should happen?
Yeah, firstly, I was wrong. Jack Hetherington has played 2 games this year, but I think this is a great signing for the Penrith Panthers at the moment because when you look at their forward pack, there's really only one man putting his hand up that's improved from 2018. 2018, they were obviously eliminated in the semis, so you need everyone to improve and take the game to the next level again. Tarmo is the only man that's done that, and it's strange because he's the oldest forward in that pack and he's played the most games. He's the veteran. Your veteran should be the one sort of providing that leadership advice and guidance on the field, not necessarily leading by example, I would argue. And examples I would give to that would be Jacob Lilliman and Chris Heinington in the final years of their career. They went to Newcastle. They weren't necessarily the aggressive leaders on the field, but their experienced cool heads were there. And I think Jared Hargraves can be a mixture of both there. He still has the aggression. We saw that on Kalen Ponga. And his experience, he's been with the Roosters for at least 2 grand finals now, a couple minor premierships in that time. Yeah. And I really think that he would challenge Tarmo and there'd be a second leader in this pack. And by 2 forwards challenging each other week in, week out, you would hope that would inspire something from the back row and the lock and the forwards coming off the bench. But... a little bit of a bigger story here, probably a little bit more improbable, but I think there's something bigger going on behind the scenes here at the Roosters. Only my opinion, but I think they've released this to the media on purpose with the intention to gather some interest there. Now, we know they're after Tavita Pengai Jr., and as you and I have discussed, a lot of people think Cronk's money will be used for him, but it simply can't with the amount of names coming off contract. If they want to keep their premiership winning roster, they can't afford to go and splurge half of Cronk's contract on Tavita Pengai Jr. But they could use a portion of Cronk's and the full amount of Jared Hargraves, and I've got no doubt with a third party in there, they could lure Tavita Pengai Jr. Now, this becomes a little bit more difficult for the Tricolours now because James Robert has been released. Suddenly, Broncos have the money. They're cashed up. So I think the only way the Roosters get this done now is with a bigger money incentive deal. And I'm not sure that they're interested in that. But look, if James Roberts wasn't released today, I'd be coming in with you tonight with the information that I think firmly the Roosters are looking to move on Jared Hargraves and bring in Tavita Pengai Jr.
Well, that is definitely an interesting point. Now, I sort of want to move on now to who leaves Penrith if they sign Jared Hargreaves, because it definitely seems like someone will have to go. Again, I've been told this by my father, not exactly the best source, but he says on the Penrith Panthers fan groups on Facebook, I don't know where they're hearing this from, so take this with a massive grain of salt, guys, that they could be looking to move on James Tarmo, which, when you look at the current climate of Penrith, I'd be more hard-pressed to release, to let Regan Campbell-Gillard go and possibly use his money for Jared Hargreaves, because he's just not put in the effort this season. Definitely not enough to get selected for Origin. I believe it was the week that he said he was going to, really prove over the next month that he does deserve to be selected for Origin. I think he got dropped that week, so it's definitely not been the best season for RCG. And look, in terms of forwards, I'm trying to think of someone who's probably on a bit of a bigger pay packet that would be able to leave and give Penrith the funds to sign Maria Hargreaves. And I can't really think of anyone else, unless they release a few of the younger guys, which does not look like a smart move with the effort that those guys have been putting in this season. So if I'm Penrith, I probably move on RCG for JWH. But
well, the only larger name forwards that are off contract at the end of this year is Frank Winterstein, and the other is Tim Grant. I don't think either would be on huge coin at all.
Nah. Maybe both of them, if they both left, could give Penrith some spare funds, but I still don't know if it would be enough. So
Regan Campbell-Gillard seems to be the only option. I mean, not many clubs would be interested in Sam McKendry. He made his return in New South Wales Cup, but he seems very injury prone, especially having had 3 or 4 major ACL reconstructions now. And the rest of their roster is either young and performing or has a lot of potential and isn't on much coin, so it doesn't make sense to move them on.
Look, I'm just trying to think, like, if anyone else can be moved on from Penrith. That makes sense. I mean, they could move Tarmo, and it makes sense in the term that he's getting older, but he's one of their key assets right now, I would argue.
You don't move your captain on. Not when he's in his best form for the past half decade.
Yeah, and look, with him and Rory Hargreaves together, that'll make a lethal forward pack. So I can't think of anyone else other than Regan Campbell-Gillard. I know it might seem strange when a year ago he was playing Origin, and he hasn't really had a form slump until this season. Look, it's a strange one. If you told me at the start of the season, halfway through the year there are going to be rumours that Jared Hargreaves will be heading to Penrith, I would have told you why they don't need him. But now,
suddenly they do.
And it makes a lot of sense as well, this move, for the Roosters as well. As you said, they probably want to get some funds in for Pangai Jr. So, so anyway, are we agreeing that it probably makes the most sense if they get rid of RCG and bring in Jared Hargreaves?
Yeah, it does make the most sense. Even if they've got to pay a small portion of RCG's contract, I think long term, it's probably not long term, but short term, it is so much more value to get Jared Hargreaves there.
Yep. Up next, a bit of Origin talk. Of course, Origin is 1 week away from today. We've got some pros and cons to talk about for State of Origin. So I'm actually going to start off with a con first, because it's one that has really stood out to me. Coming out of Queensland, and that is playing Michael Morgan at centre and Ben Hunt at hooker. Now, especially Ben Hunt at hooker. I know he's played there before. I know he can play there. I think off the top of my head when the last time was he played there. Has Ben Hunt played hooker while he's been at the Dragons? Do you know?
Not whilst he's been at the Dragons, but he has played hooker in 2017 for the Broncos. I think in the finals also, perhaps.
Yeah, and I remember him doing pretty well there. However, we are talking about Origin, and we are also talking about a 2-year absence from playing in that position. So that's the point I'm trying to make. It's a bit of a risky move because we don't know if he's going to have that same impact in an Origin game, playing someone out of position in your spine. I mean, it's a tough one for me. Another one is Michael Morgan. Now, I can't think of the last time that he played in the centres for the Cowboys. I don't actually think he's played there for Queensland for a while either. I know that he
did play there once.
Little bit. Yeah, once.
Yeah.
So, look, you can make the same argument as Tom Trbojevic playing on the wing for New South Wales. However, these players are a lot more established. As we said, there's been a 2-year absence for Ben Hunt playing in the hooker role in general. And for Michael Morgan, he's definitely not played in the centres for a while. So I see that as a bit of a risky move. I get why Kevy's done it. You want to get your star players in there. But, especially with Ben Hunt, he's not exactly played the best lately. I would have felt safer for Queensland if maybe they put a Granville in there or even a Reid Marnie, have Ben Hunt coming off the bench because those two guys would be debuting for Origin. If either one of those guys does not, play to an Origin standard, Ben Hunt should get out of jail card. Last 20 minutes, if it's just not going right, you need to get the win. Take off Marty, take off Granville, and you put Ben Hunt on. And then you can sort of rotate from there. You could play in the halves or in that hooking role. That's what I would have preferred to see. However, now what we're left with is Ben Hunt playing hooker for Queensland and Moses Mbai as the utility player coming off the bench. I don't think he's played much hooker at all. I could be wrong.
5 games.
At least not for a little while, has he?
5 games.
Did you say 5 games?
In his 112-game career, only 5 times.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, if Ben Hunt's not playing well at hooker, you take him off, you put Moses Mbai on at hooker, you're presenting yourself with the same risk.
Yep.
Someone that's inexperienced at hooker. That's why I reckon they at least needed one hooker in there. And I'm just trying to think right now, where else does Moses Mbai play when he comes on? Because I don't think Kalen Ponga's coming off.
No.
I don't think Cam Munster comes off. Maybe Cherry Evans if he's got a little bit of a nagging injury near the end. That's all I can think of. Otherwise, he should put in an 80-minute shift.
I put a column up today, and I think Kevin Walters inadvertently, he accidentally confirmed Moses will be hooker. So here's the quote, and tell me if you get the same sense that I got from it. He's talking in regards to Cameron Smith. He's the smartest hooker in the competition. We need to use those smarts. Even though he's not on the field, we'll be using those smarts throughout the week to get the best advantage for this Queensland team. Ben and Moses, they're very talented players, but I'm sure we could all use some wisdom from Cameron. The fact he specifically mentioned Moses Mbai alongside Ben Hunt, who is the hooker, makes me seem like he accidentally just confirmed that Mbai will be playing hooker when he comes on.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily think it's accidental. I think he's sort of confirming it by just sliding it in there because he was obviously talking about Cam Smith. He might have thought, well, there might not be as big of a backlash over Mbai, which there hasn't been if, we're talking about Cam Smith here, mentoring him, possibly the best player in our game. With that, just on this, do you see somehow it's actually one of our topics later on, so I'll talk about it later. Okay. But, this to me says, now I don't necessarily think he will, but Cam Smith could play a bit of a larger role here because it seems like, and I don't want to be rude to Kevy, it seems like that, I don't want to say the word, but that dumb of a move that there has to be a reason for it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Anyway, I've gotten that con out of the way. Do you want to give us a pro that you've got for Origin? Yeah,
well, we saw Tom Trbojevic play at centre for the Australian Kangaroos against the New Zealand Kiwis and Tonga at the end of last year, and he scored a couple tries in both games from what I remember. He looked very dangerous, and I think Morgan probably doesn't possess as good a running game as Tommy T, but definitely a better playmaking game. How dangerous that makes him from centre, I'm not sure. But when you do hand him a floating role and allow him potentially to float into the right back line also, then I think the potential is there for Michael Morgan to really have a dangerous running game. We can't forget he did start his career at fullback, and he has played in the centres beforehand. He is out of position, but not so much to the extent that I think mainstream media would have you believe. As for Hunt, a very strange one. He has told the media he's up for 80 minutes in the middle. He knows he can do it when it gets down to it. But you just don't know until the night because Origin is so physical and so fast-paced. That's not my opinion. That's almost proven as fact because everyone that plays Origin will say that. With Mbai being coached by Smith, does that make him dangerous out of hooker? Yes. Can you teach someone that much in 1 week? No. Yeah. Should Mbai be on the bench? Probably not, given he's not even the best fullback at his club at the moment. Cory Thompson is. So, and Cory Thompson's a Queenslander also, mind you. Moses no doubt has a lot of versatility. 5'8", hooker, fullback, wing, halfback. He can virtually play anywhere. He could probably even play a lock role in the middle if he's going to be there defending at hooker. I wouldn't be opposed to having him at lock either. But the question is, of the 6 or 7 positions I just named, how many is he actually going to perform at an Origin level in? And I would tell you 0, which makes his selection a little bit of a strange one. But look, one thing that is in favour of Ben Hunt, Andrew Johns, the 8th Immortal, he played hooker for New South Wales. I can't remember who the halfback was that kept him at hooker, but there was a stage of his career where he was the hooker. So he was a halfback at Newcastle. He played hooker there. Perhaps Hunt can implement some sort of dangerous game plan. I don't necessarily think he should try to fight fire with Damien Cook. He won't win. He needs to implement his vision that he has as a halfback into the first line of attack at hooker there and hopefully come up with some crafty plays.
Yeah. Do you have any pros or cons going into this Origin game? Anything that stands out to you either way?
I think a big pro for Queensland's Dane Gagai back on the wing. People will say he's out of form for club, but I just don't think he's a natural centre. I don't think he'd be there if Greg Inglis hadn't retired, Braden Burns hadn't got injured, and Adam Daly wasn't just coming back from an injury. I like Jai Arrow in the front row. I like the fact he's starting with Josh Maguire. I don't mind the bench. I think that is a pro for Queensland. And it's something I wrote about today, which I'll just drag up now, guys. I'm just scrolling on the Instagram. The Queensland bench has 345 games of NRL experience. New South Wales only 262. Now, you can say, Clarkey, that's only 83 games less across 4 players. It's not that big of a deal. But when you factor in that the Maroons bench has played 21 finals matches, which is probably as close as big game experience we can get in regards to Origin, the Blues have only played 10. So there's more than double big game experience there for the Maroons. So I think that's a big pro for them.
Yeah, definitely. Just before we go off this topic, 2 quick things that I actually forgot we decided to incorporate into this question earlier on. So we'll quickly do it now. Daly Cherry, I just got 2 questions for you. Daly Cherry Evans getting picked at halfback after being out injured, hasn't even played a game for Manly since he's been back. Is this a risky move?
It's risky, but when you see the way he played for Australia last year and you factor in the only game Queensland won of last year's series was Daly Cherry Evans at halfback, then he needs to be there.
All right, question 2, similar question. Is Nathan Cleary being picked out of form for New South Wales a big risk?
It just depends how you look at it because players rise to the occasion and you play to the standard that you're surrounded with in the NRL. It's no doubt last year when the Rabbitohs were on fire, their entire forward pack was in form. The Burgess brothers all were. John Sutton was. It's no doubt that now the Panthers are playing poor at Clubland. Everyone is saying their entire squad is out of form. I personally wouldn't be carrying Nathan Cleary because as far as my opinion goes, guys, I think you can afford to carry potentially a prop or a back row that's slightly out of form in your team because you rise to the level of your forward pack. But I don't think you can afford to pick a half like Nathan Cleary who's playing out of form, but most importantly, out of confidence. Because when your forward pack wins those key moments in the middle of the field, you need your halfback perfectly poised, in form, playing with a ton of confidence so he can make that snap decision and capitalise, because the fact is with Origin, not too many of them present themselves, and I would hate to see Nathan Cleary second guess himself and cost the Blues a big opportunity.
Yeah, I was having a quick think about this one today, and I actually think it's not that big a risk, believe it or not.
Okay.
So I factored in a couple of things. At Penrith, it is a very toxic environment at the moment. Not the town. I live in the town. Great town. I'm talking about the football club. Need to put that in there. So the club seems to be a toxic environment right now. It'll be good for Nathan to get out of there. And, it just doesn't look like it's working being coached by his dad. Something's not working there. I don't know exactly what. We can't exactly see behind the scenes, but something's not working there. Let's not forget, 2016, 17, 18, Nathan Cleary was playing great. This is only the first time we've seen him sort of drop out of form a bit. And mind you, I don't even think he's Penrith's worst player. I mean, there's almost half a team that's been playing worse than him. I think it's because he is the halfback and in such a prominent role, he's probably copping a bit more grief, which I can understand to an extent. Another thing, as I said, he's going to be playing... he's going to be in Origin camp for 10 days. He can clear his mind. He can completely forget about Penrith for a while. And look, he's the incumbent New South Wales halfback, an Origin-winning halfback who played decent in Origin last year. Some people may say that's because of James Maloney. I can see that argument as well, but he's been playing with Maloney this year, and I'll tell you what, it hasn't been that great. Another thing is, Cody Walker is on fire. He's in form. He looks ready for this Origin game. If need be, I can see Cody Walker probably taking on a bit more of a workload, and Nathan Cleary maybe taking a step back and maybe sticking primarily to kicking the ball on fifth and last and get a couple of players in there. So, in a weird sense, he's got less pressure on him now that he's been picked for Origin in a way than he did at Penrith. So, and look, I'm not saying he's going to come out and have a man of the match performance, but I don't think he's going to play as bad as he did at Penrith. But that's just one that we're going to have to wait and see.
Just quickly, Ash Taylor, obviously he was the Rookie of the Year over Cleary that when they first made their debuts. Cleary come in at about halfway, so probably not a fair comparison, but we've probably said about a dozen times now, Ash Taylor has dropped in form. The fact this is the first time we're saying it about Cleary, I guess, shows a true test of his character and just shows how consistent he actually is within his game. And one con that I actually did come up with while you were talking there, because Cody Walker isn't a prominent kicker at his club, he's not known for his short or long kicking game, and the stats back this up. Reynolds is kicking, I think, an average of like 400 metres a game. Cody Walker's around 100 mark. I think that's a con for the Blues because I think that does place a lot of pressure on Nathan Cleary, and it's pretty evident for the Queensland forward pack who they need to mark up on last.
Oh, yeah, and I believe it was in Origin last year. I sort of remember off the top of my head. They were targeting Cleary. It seemed whenever he'd get a kick, they'd just smash him. He'd get back up, which was great, but it just seemed they were on him every single kick. And you're right, that's only going to get worse in this series. But I guess at least for Cleary, he's not going to have to control the ruck as much. He can leave that a bit more to Cody Walker and more focus on that kicking game. However, you are right. He is going to have a big target on his head once it gets to the fifth and last. Anyway, tackle 3. The Dragons' salary cap dispensations. So they've been given cap relief, obviously, because of the Jack DeBellin situation. Look, I don't really want to get into that. That's not really my type of thing. I don't really like talking about that topic. However, they've received a bit of cap dispensation. You did a column, I believe it was today, maybe yesterday, where you actually named some potential players that the Dragons could sign with that money.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing and something I hadn't factored in until today is they've been granted $239K salary cap suspension. The NRL season is 25 rounds. We're at round 12 now. So that 239K, realistically, I mean, you can double that. Because if someone signs for this year, you're signing them for essentially, I'm not good at the math here, but about $480,000 $178K is what the whole year would equate to if they receive that portion for the last half of the year. Obviously, getting into 2020 and stuff, that's when it becomes a bit of a shamble with how the cap is. But a couple players I identified that they could definitely get within this price range and would probably be released from their club. Number one, Corey Jensen from the North Queensland Cowboys. Consistent performer. Rumours that Super League are interested in him. Hasn't been able to cement a permanent spot within Paul Green's roster at the Cowboys. And he did play in the Queensland residence game and looked very strong there. Luke Bateman from the Canberra Raiders. Been playing his football with Mounties this year. Still a solid nuggety defender in the middle. Hard man, good hit up, solid footy player. But I just don't think, given the injuries that Canberra have at the moment with their forward pack, and if he hasn't broken in yet, and more importantly, the emergence of some of their young stars, Hudson Young, Corey Horsburgh, I just don't think there's a spot for him left at the Raiders anymore, so perhaps a move to the Dragons makes sense. Patrick Kafusi from the Melbourne Storm. Now, all preseason we heard the Storm are over the cap since they signed Smith. They need to get rid of a couple players, or at least one. Kafusi's one of those players. I'm not sure how many games of first grade he's played so far this year. I believe it's 1 or 2, but again, he's not going to establish a permanent spot within Bellamy's roster this late in the season unless major injuries occur. A fresh start could suit him. Jack Stockwell from the Gold Coast Titans. Playing some, consistent footy for the games he has played, but not setting the world on fire. I'm sure if he asked for a release, Brennan would grant it. Given we have a lot of depth around our forwards at the moment, I think we've still got Latu playing reserve grade the whole year. Albert Verte from the Warriors. Now, I haven't watched too much Warriors football this year, especially not their lower grades, so I can't make a comment there. But I know Super League are interested in him. Perhaps he wants to take this deal, remain in the NRL. And last but not least, Patrick Mago, the former Cowboy, now Bronco. Again, been in and out of this Broncos side with Wayne Bennett. Hasn't got a start under Anthony Seibold yet. Perhaps he wants to give a fresh start to his career, move down to Sydney, and try to restart his footy career, I suppose. And this would give all of those players realistically a chance to become a permanent first-grade player for at least the last half of this season. And then that gives them more contract opportunities from there. Probably the biggest thing that would be involved for them, for me, I don't think they would want to settle permanently down there, given it would likely only be a half-year contract at the opening stages. And obviously, these guys are all older men, late 20s, early 30s. They don't want to be moving their family up there, moving their kids out of school for 6 months. So it would require them to likely move away from their family. But in terms of all of their future, they would definitely be giving themselves better opportunities as far as contracts are concerned for 2020 onwards.
Yeah, that's a good point you really brought up at the end there. I was sort of thinking good move for a lot of those guys until you said that, because we don't take into account the personal lives aspect. That sort of makes me think for a couple of the players that have been linked to the Super League on possibly a multi-year deal, would it be more beneficial to the players, and I know it sounds ridiculous, to move their family halfway across the world where they're going to have a bit of job security? It's a real odd one to think about. Do you take the risk and go to the Dragons for half a season, possibly without being re-signed for next season? That's the question.
Professionally, it's a great move, but personally, it requires a lot of sacrifice, I believe.
Yeah, and that can be really hard to do. Now, with all those players, I don't know the family situation, so I can't comment if all those players have kids, wives, etc., but they'd at least be leaving some family behind. It's a tough one. I could see professionally most of those guys, as you said, moving to the Dragons. However, do the Dragons possibly save that money for next season, or see if de Belling gets back into the side eventually?
So I'm not sure the exact rulings on it, but I believe the money has to be spent this season, and it has to be spent on a forward. So there's no, because it's essentially an exemption from the cap because of this new no-fault stand-down policy, making one of their star players unavailable.
Yeah, and I guess that helps as well with the financial security for the club as well. They're not going to sign someone for next season, and then Jack DeBellin all of a sudden is proven innocent, and then he comes back into the squad, and now you've got to pay 2 wages. So I get it from that sense, but as I said, the personal aspect really comes into it when it is such a short contract.
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth making the move? Look, you'd basically need up front when you're signing the contract, McGregor to say, and you need to trust him too, you need him to say, look, we can only sign you to this half-year contract right now, but
it's dependent on your performance.
Depending on your performance, we are looking to re-sign you. Now, should your form on the field sort of dictate your personal future? Because if somebody moves their kids to Wollongong, they get the family set up there, they're there for half a year, and then they're gone. Let's just say, for argument's sake, no NRL club wants them, then you got to shift your family to England after playing in Wollongong for 6 months. It is tough, and
I think especially for the Queensland players, Jensen, Mago, etc. I think you just have to make a sacrifice and leave your family and your kids in school up in Queensland, come down for this half year and see what you can make of your future. And one big name I actually haven't thrown up yet that I've written another column on today, Russell Packer, former New Zealand Kiwi. He is out of favour with the Tigers. He obviously hasn't played for the last month now. Under Ivan Cleary, he was a member of the captaincy group. This year, he's dumped to reserve grade unwanted by Michael Maguire. There's already been rumours that the Tigers want to try to land Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. They don't have enough money, but they want to trade some players to the Panthers. One of those names was Russell Packer, and he has played under Mary McGregor before. As far as that goes, it makes sense. But when you check the comments section of this column, Oz, no Dragons fan wants him there. They think he's a traitor. They think he's a dog. Of course, he came to the club, played a couple years in New South Wales Cup as he reformed his life after coming out of jail, and then left the club for the Tigers for a bigger money offer. And they think he turned their back on the club after they pretty much gave him another chance at life. So you can understand where Dragons fans are coming from. But again, from a professional standpoint, it would be a good signing for the club.
And you know what? Russell Packer does, make sense. And for Packer, for him to move from the Tigers to the Dragons, it's not as big a move as some of these. And I'd argue now that it is probably likely that the Dragons would re-sign him at the end of the year, at least on a 1-year deal. So, a name like Russell Packer, it does seem like, it's a safer move for him personally and professionally. It makes a lot more sense. However, if I'm Penrith, I'm doing everything I can to get this deal through for Zelezniak. Okay. Now, you get Packer in this season. As we talked about before, I believe he'll add some of that aggression.
Yep.
I believe it's Elijah Taylor as well, a part of that deal.
He might not. It might not be both of them, but they've definitely both been considered by the club to some degree.
Yeah, well, Elijah Taylor's a bit of an odd one as well because he made a mid-season move a few years ago from Penrith to the Tigers. So
and
that
he
might
was
be
another member of the captaincy group.
There you go.
These players have fallen heavily out of favour under Madge, haven't they?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, the Ivan Cleary connection as well.
Exactly.
They moved to Cleary's club. They've played under him before.
They've been captains under him before.
They played decent under him. It makes sense. Add Maria Hargraves to that connection next year. Maybe you do have to get rid of Tamo then, but Maria Hargreaves and Packer, or maybe if they have the money, Packer off the bench, Maria Hargreaves and Packer especially would really add to Penrith. Elijah Taylor... I don't see him starting. Maybe off the bench as well. Obviously, he was a pretty prominent figure for Penrith when he was last there. I'd argue probably not as much anymore. I'd say they'd probably back the fish at lock. But, possibly if he continues his poor form, then yes. But I think Fisher Harris will come good. So if I was Penrith, look, I'd be working very hard to get this deal through. But it also makes a lot of sense for the Dragons. So, either one, I believe it's a win for Russell Packer.
Yeah, definitely. As you said, it's a win-win, not just for the Russell Packer personally, but for the Panthers also. It makes a lot of sense. but back on Packer, even if he makes the move to the Dragons, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Any move for Russell Packer at this stage of his career, looks to be stuck in reserve grade, makes sense for me.
Yeah, we'll move on to tackle 4 now. Now, it's how do we reduce injuries? So this topic came up in a personal conversation we were having earlier today. I've got the message up here. You brought up the point, which is really interesting. 78 of roughly 500 contracted players would be out this round if not for the bye. Now, that is concerning. Yeah. I didn't know that stat before, so I wasn't necessarily too worried. I knew there was a fair few players out injured, but when you put it in that perspective, there's something really happening. Personally, I don't have a set answer for how we reduce injuries. I guess we could be more strict on negative plays, on plays that give away penalties. For example, Maria Hargreaves on Kalen Ponga the other night. Although we didn't get an injury from it, it definitely reduces the risk, I'd say, if less players are obviously making these tackles, such as crushes. We're talking lifting above the horizontal, etc. I can't think of any other way specifically in concrete off the top of my head how we reduce injuries, but it is definitely something that we'll have to do. How do you reckon we sort of go about reducing injuries in the future?
It's one of those really hard ones, and one of those situations I refer to as it's not a light bulb fix, because there's not just one switch we can flip and suddenly that's the issue fixed. It's a long, strenuous process that will require a lot of experiment, and that experiment could go wrong. Now, there's two ways, two big, I guess, prominent members here I'd like to bring up their points.
Yep.
Benji Marshall has said, we cannot afford to lower the interchange. As a player, I'm telling you, we push our bodies to the limits. We can't afford to lower it. Paul Kent has come out and said, obviously one of the most respected, biggest journalists in Australia, especially as far as NRL is concerned, we need to reduce the interchange because that will introduce more fatigue and that will lessen the impact our players are sustaining throughout an 80-minute performance. So for me, those two are probably the big argument, the two big talking points. Do we listen to the player who was saying, they can't do it any further? But then Paul Kent is also a former player. He's played our game. I believe he played like one or two NRL games.
He played one game at halfback for Parramatta in the 80s.
There you go. So he played one game at Top Flight, but he's saying from a journalist and a fan perspective that reducing interchange would help to some extent. Apart from that, there's, like you said, there's no real concrete fix. I mean, what can we really do? Introduce more bye rounds? These freak injuries are still going to occur. Make footy played on every single night of the week. So you're not having 4-day turnarounds, you're having 5-day turnarounds. It won't work because the NRL...
So we can get 500 people to ANZ Stadium on a Wednesday night at 8 o'clock.
Exactly, and the NRL won't do it because it's not an attractive time slot as far as TV rights are concerned, which means less advertisement money, etc., etc. There's just no firm switch that I really think we can flip and have this problem solved. It's a really tough, complex issue, but it is one we can't neglect. We need to get on top of this now, and even if the fix takes another half decade, at least start taking some positive steps as a professional code into potentially solving this problem. It's just hard because a lot of the big NRL honchos as well have heavy egos, and if they were to make an error in this, and I personally wouldn't hold them accountable, because right now, as you know, I'm not sure many people even watching have a concrete fix. So we'll take some error. No doubt they'll be slammed for that. But I just think their egos are too big to sort of bite down, put their hand up and go, oh, well, it's tough, guys. That's not going to work. We're going to try something else.
Well, I mean, Thursday night football is definitely not working right now in some of these time slots, but they don't seem to be willing to change, when games are played so we can get bigger crowds, or reduce ticket prices a bit because, they don't want to be seen as the ones making the mistake. Anyway, back onto the topic though, I'm just looking down the list of teams here. Now, not every club, but I tell you what, for a fair few clubs, there are names that are jumping out to me that have gotten injured this year. Brisbane Broncos. Jack Bird.
Yep.
He's out for the remainder of the season, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, we've got John Bateman for the Raiders, been out for the past month, and I believe Josh Hodgson is going to be out for a while now.
Yep. Hodgson,
from what I've seen,
is out for 6 weeks. He requires surgery on a fractured thumb. And Bateman will meet with a specialist this Friday morning in a hope to return early from a fractured eye socket.
Yeah, the Bulldogs, I might just be having a mind blank here, but no jumps out at me. No.
Dylan Napa missed a large portion. Obviously, their prize recruit, their biggest name signing, he missed a large portion of the start of this season due to a syndesmosis injury, his right ankle, I believe.
Yeah. The Cronulla Sharks, Matt Moylan, Sean Johnson.
Need you say more?
Yep. Yeah. Gold Coast Titans, Tyrone Roberts, Ash Taylor, Michael Gordon. I'm forgetting people here.
Ryan
we haven't
James
just had
gone
three
for the year. Our captain.
Ryan James has gone for the year. Yeah. So the Titans have been hit bad by injuries, which is sad to see. Another team that's been hit pretty bad by injuries, but seems to be getting on with it all right, except for last week, the Manly Seagulls.
Oh, huge injuries.
DCE's back now, but he's not played for Manly. He's going that Origin squad. The Melbourne Storm, who jumps out at me? I know there's been someone.
Scott Drinkwater, ACL.
Scott Drinkwater. Start of the year preseason. Scott Drinkwater. Yeah, I was trying to think during the season, but
Christian Welch, MCL 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm bad with the memory, man. But there's just been so many injuries.
100%. It's hard to keep up. Hard. Imagine being the NRL physio.
I was watching him earlier tonight on
the Fan?
Fox League on the Fan. Yeah, Andrew Johnson. He was talking about, I think it was the Adam Dewey injury from last year, and he was talking about how Dewey's to go off topic a bit. How he's I believe it was his tibia, whichever bone is the one in your shin, went forward, and you could see it go forward, and he could tell just by the assessment that the on-field trainers were doing that you could tell what injury it was.
He's such a knowledgeable bloke. I've had him on the podcast, and I've gone over the weekly injuries with him on the phone when he drives to work. He's a busy man. He's hard to get, but it's the mixture of a fan's point of view and the ultimate professional's point of view, and there's just not many people that can offer that.
Yeah, and it was really interesting watching because they were talking about on-field trainers that are checking for injuries, and he was telling what they'll check, what they're doing, what they're looking for, and it was really interesting. Anyway, back onto the topic. The Newcastle Knights, Tautau Moga at the very start of the season.
Danny Levi's set to miss 4 to 8 weeks. He just hurt his right ankle.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, has there been any other big...
Mitchell Pearce has an injured groin. He wouldn't play this week if it wasn't for the bye.
Yeah, but he should be back for Newcastle's next game, I believe. He should be right. Yeah, he just wasn't allowed to run for a bit, was it? Until, I believe is it Thursday? He's not allowed. I saw it somewhere, I think. Yeah. North Queensland Cowboys, big one. Nane McDonald and
Kyle Felt.
Kyle Felt. And just on the McDonald one, the game management by the referees around that was poor. They're getting better at it now, but going to a couple of Penrith games this season, I've seen players who have been fine go down, but the refs have probably just waited a little bit too long to call time off. They've probably got, let a couple of tackles go while someone is in the background down injured. When your team's down a player because of injury, and especially when the play is going on around the injured player, it's not only unfair to the team, but it could be potentially dangerous for not only that player that's down injured, for other players trying to get around him and the trainer. So I just wanted to bring that up for the Cowboys and Nane McDonald.
Mm-hmm. Who have you got next?
Parramatta Eels.
Nathan Brown, Peck, Dylan Brown, lower back.
Yeah, we talk about, I know he came back, but Blake Ferguson missed a week with a rib injury. He did break his nose, but it was for a rib injury.
Yep.
But Penrith Panthers, Isaiah Yeo, just off the top of my head. Who else? They've missed Kickout for the start of the season, and there's been a couple of weeks since then he's been out.
Yep.
South Sydney.
Well, we touched on Adam Dowie before. Adam Reynolds, he got injured last week. He's in this week, though.
I don't think they've been too hard stricken.
Greg Inglis wasn't playing, obviously, before he retired, which was a big out at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. The Dragons, Frizzell, start of the season. Now James Graham.
Yeah, who hasn't been injured for them? Tim Laffey, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Sydney Roosters, Jake Friend jumps out at me straight away. We've had Cronk out for periods of time. And Luke Keary most recently, which I believe they have to do some assessments. To see when he'll be back. That one's not certain.
Another big one would be Brett Morris injuring his MCL at Brookvale.
Brett Morris. Yeah, but with that one, you could see, they've got the players to sort of come in and cover him. And Ikavalu's done a good job so far, but definitely another big out. After the World Club Challenge game he had an absolute blinder. The New Zealand Warriors. Now, I haven't caught too much
Mainly
of the Warriors
just
games
Blake Green. They've missed their halfback for a portion of this year.
Yeah. And the West Tigers, we're talking Benji Marshall.
Yeah, Chris Lawrence with a freak injury. That's more so a freak injury, but...
Yeah, and that one was... Oh, no, did we call it off-field? It was at training?
Yeah. I think most notably for the Tigers is the fact both their 5'8s have been out, Reynolds and Marshall.
Yeah, but it's good to see that Chris Lawrence is coming back, because at the start of the year, there were talks of he might have to retire. It was that bad of an injury.
Yeah.
So,
surgeons likened it to a car crash. They said they haven't seen anything like that before in rugby league.
Was it Ben Matalino he ran into? I tell you. Ben Matalino.
He must have a hard head.
A brick house. I'll tell you what. Anyway, so that just gives a bit of perspective on the injuries. We've probably been on it, that topic for a little bit too much. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. It's everyone's favourite topics for the final two. It is Origin. First of all, Cam Smith to play Origin? ? I'm going to say no. I believe he's purely been brought in for that mentoring role. It was pretty obvious he was that 21st man, especially when Kevy never denied it when he was asked about it. He just said, you guys will find out later this week or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And, my cat's just fallen out of the cupboard. So that was that noise that we just heard there. Anyway, Cam Smith, I don't think he'll play. I think he's more there for a mentoring role and for Queensland to play mind games up until the last minute. Because New South Wales, if he's there, he could play.
Yeah.
They're going to have some type of game plan for him, and it will distract them a little bit. They're not going to focus on making a game plan for Cam Smith, but Freddie's going to be thinking, hey, just in case, we've really got to, at least have something just in case he does play. Look, he could play, and touch on wood that neither of these guys do, but if Mbai or Ben Hunt get injured, I could see him playing then, but I don't think this is a trick. Even though they're funny options for Hooker, Hunt, and Moses, I don't think that Cam Smith will play. What about you?
I don't see him playing. I don't see him playing at all. Realistically, it is just mind games. So Walters still hasn't named his full 21 players. He's named Milford and Capewell as his 18th and 19th man. We don't know who his 20 or his 21st man is. A journalist asked him, is that name Cam Smith? And he said, I'll get back to you later in the week. A little bit cheeky. I mean, probably just the Origin mind games. We see it every single year. But I just think Cameron Smith has a little bit too much to risk if he comes back and Maroons don't win. If they don't win the series. In terms of modern legacy, I'm talking present legacy, because of course this would be his first series up against Damien Cook, the man who a lot of people think is currently better than him. So if he was to lose to Cook, that could all but confirm that. But most importantly, he was the key member. He was the captain of predominant time of that entire dominant decade by the Maroons. So for me, if he comes back and he isn't to win this series, he does put a little bit of a taint on his Origin legacy, which at this stage is unblemishable. There's nothing wrong with it. It's impeccable. It really is. So I just think it's mind games. I will almost certainly say it would take some extremely dire circumstances for Smith to come back. I'm talking Mbai, Hunt, and probably Granville all injured in a freak week or fortnight. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? Cam Smith seems like the type of guy to me that would honour his retirement. You know what I mean? I don't think he'd come back and cheapen, in a sense, his retirement.
Yep.
Look, he has still played well this season, but even if he is added into that Queensland squad, it's a big positive. But I still think on paper, and I know we can't go off paper in Origin too much, but on paper, I'd say New South Wales are probably still the better side. And if you add Cam Smith into that Queensland squad, maybe there's a bit of bias creeping into my head. I don't know, but I don't straight away make Queensland the favourites, although they probably would end up being the favourites because a lot of people would jump on that bandwagon. But I don't think one player can change everything. Cam Smith's the most likely to do it, but I don't think he can. And just on Damien Cook's already showed Cameron Smith up once last year. In that game, it was Souths and Melbourne at ANZ Stadium, and he earned Cam's respect that night. And you can really tell that Cam Smith was making sure he was getting into marker every single play. He had his eyes locked on Damien Cook. He didn't want to let Cook go anywhere, and Cook knew that. The millisecond Cam Smith took his eyes off Cook, Cook was going out a dummy half, and he made that, I believe it was a 30-metre run, solo effort to score. So on that night, he did really earn Cookie's respect. But just on that, in a fantasy world, forgetting about the Origin retirement, whatever, I'd love to see on that bigger stage Cam Smith and Damien Cook go at it. I mean, obviously they're not going to go at it, but you know what I mean, going up against one another. I'd probably agree that Cook has been the better hooker this season and possibly last season. So it'd be really interesting to see. But as I said, in the end, I don't think Cam Smith will play. I think, as he said, it would take a miracle. Kevy'd have to go around with a baseball bat and take out Ben Hunt, Jake Granville, and Moses Mbai for that to happen. I mean, it just really does not look likely to me. And a lot of people are saying, and even on the post I put up, I'm not sure about you, a lot of people buying game Smith will play. He's not just there to be a mentor, guys. I think we need to ground this in reality a bit more. Cam Smith seems like a guy that does really want to honour his Origin retirement. He's purely there just to give back to the team that gave him so much, so many Origin Series wins that got him on that pedestal of being one of, if not the best players in our game. So I'm ruling this one out. I'm saying there's a 99.99 etc. % chance that he does not play Origin. Yep. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to rule it out. I don't think he plays unless dire circumstances occur.
Beautiful. Okay, so on to the sixth and final tackle. Jesus Christ, how long have we been going? Because I tell you what, this one felt like it's gone for
1 hour and 3 minutes.
Oh, okay, well, that's around average. But anyway, right to our last tackle now. Hopefully you've stuck with us. We've got big Origin miss-outs, as I've put it. Now, I probably could have worded it better. Basically, who are the players that are probably a bit unlucky that they didn't get selected for Origin? I'm going to kick off first. Adam Reynolds. Now, it was probably... What ruled him out was probably that little injury that he had on the weekend for the Tigers. Otherwise, I believe it was probably likely he would have got selected. And Freddie said that in a press conference, that him getting that nagging injury didn't help. Obviously, he will be back for South Sydney this week, but it could still be troubling him a bit and it could develop into something worse. So I see why they didn't. However, he has been consistent all season from round 1 all the way to now round 12. He's been amazing. Him, Cook, and Walker would have been amazing to watch in Origin. We're only going to get half of the spine, unfortunately. Look, Alex Johnston wasn't really being considered by anyone, I don't think, unfortunately. But, man, I tell you, Adam Reynolds is possibly the unluckiest bloke in New South Wales right now, in the sense that he didn't end up getting a bad injury. Hopefully, you guys can't. Goddamn cat in the background. I'm so sorry. But yeah, I think, and I know it sounds weird. It's a bit worse off that it was only a little injury because he could have played. I mean, I guess if it's one that kept him out for a couple of weeks, he would have thought, oh, okay, well, obviously can't play. And I believe he put out an Instagram post or a tweet the day that he got his results. And I don't think he added Freddie Fitler, but, he said in the post something along the lines of, oh, I'm 100% fit, I can play. Rah, rah, rah. I don't think he addressed it necessarily, but you kind of get the vibe that he was putting his case forth to Freddie, hey, I'm fit, pick me. So I think he missed out, and I feel bad for him. Hey, like, he has, as I said, been consistent all year. I think we put him on our list as the best halfback so far this season. It's hard to dispute that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just one of those things. But I get why he wasn't selected.
Yeah, on his tweet, just said 3 days ago, good news this morning with no fracture. Thanks to everyone for their messages. I look forward to getting back out there this weekend. And as you said, that does send the message that, hey, I'm fit, Freddie. I'm playing this weekend. So, why would I not be fit another 4 days later on that next Wednesday? My 2 picks, I've gone for 2 from each side. One, I'm going to stick with you. I thought Adam Reynolds was very unlucky to miss out. Now, I know the arguments there, Mitchell Pearce is the more in-form halfback. And yeah, that's true, but we're talking about a whole year so far. And we can't forget Pearce was missing in action for the first 6 rounds of the NRL season. Yes, his last 5 have been very good. They have been spectacular. He's been the man of the match in all 5. And that is a good run of form. But if we're going to be fair and go off the entire year, then Adam Reynolds is the man. He was very unlucky to miss out. And also Finucane. I think I would have had him there over Cam Murray for the reason he can also play front row forward. And at this stage, the Blues bench only has 1 prop. And he's a rookie who's just ticked over double-digit NRL games. I'm talking Payne Haas. He played his 10th NRL game last weekend. He is their only prop. And he is the second most inexperienced player to ever play Origin. I think it's a big mistake only having a big bopper like him on the bench. Now, the argument's there. Finucane will be making his debut, just as Cameron Murray would. But I will counter that with 2 points for you. Number 1, probably not as important. When the going gets tough, and this is my opinion, Dale Finucane will dig harder. He is more gritty. He is more accustomed to those dirty games where you got to dig deep and really work hard. And I think when a going gets tough, he'd give you a little bit more than young Cameron Murray will. Cameron Murray will give more on attack, but Origin isn't built on attack. It's built on defense. And where does Finucane get that attitude and that desire to dig deeper than others? Well, he's played in the last 3 grand finals.
Yeah.
That is big game experience, and it is so valuable that he has played in the last 3. It's looking like he could potentially play 4 in a row now with the Storm. And he's actually, I believe he played in the 2012 grand final with the Bulldogs also. Or 2014, sorry. He is a big game player. He has a ton of big game experience. And I think he would have been a perfect fit for the Blues on their bench. As far as Queensland goes, these 2 I'm not so sold on as my Blues. If I was picking the Blues team, I definitely would have made those 2 changes. For the Maroons, I definitely would have had Milford over Mbai. I know Milford isn't as in form as he has been at stages of his career. In fact, this is probably the worst he's ever played in his entire career, but he still offers you more than Mbai does. He's more explosive.
Sorry, just to interject for a second. Has Milford ever played hooker before? Because it is likely that versatile player, especially for Queensland, would be coming on to play hooker. Yeah. So just to counteract that.
Yeah, but that's
I know he's
I'll
played
get to that.
fullback in the halves. Yeah, sorry.
100%. I understand where you're coming from. So I have Milford there. If I was convinced Hunt could do the job for 80 minutes. Okay. If I'm not convinced, I carry Jake Granville. You get more out of Jake Granville than you will out of Moses Mbai, especially if your plans to play him at hooker. And look, Queensland are versatile across the entire park here. It's not like they are desperate for someone with versatility. Kalen Ponga, named at fullback, plays in the halves. Corey Oates, named on the wing, can play back row. Michael Morgan, named centre. He can play in the halves. Chambers can play inside, outside centre. Gagai can also. Munster can play anywhere in your back line. Cherry Evans can play at lock. He's done it before for Queensland. Papali, Arrow can play lock, second row or front row. I mean, Ben Hunt can play halfback or at hooker. Maguire, again, front row, lock, second row. Offahen Gowie, very similar off the bench. David Fafita can play centre and he can play back row. Almost their entire team is multi-diversional. They can play different positions. There is no need to select Mbai purely based off his versatility because this is the most versatile Queensland Maroons side we've ever seen named. It doesn't make sense to carry him there. If you're not going to carry Milford because you're worried Hunt cannot play the full 80 minutes at hooker, and I understand that, then you carry Jake Granville there because the defensive workload will be less, and when Jake Granville is able to implement his running game, he is a very, very dangerous hooker out of there. And I tell you who else was unlucky to miss out. It has to be Jared Wallace. I am a little bit biased here, and I'm almost happy that he is still there for us at Clubland, but he has more meters, more average hit-ups, more average tackles, more average run meters, more Origin games experience than Dylan Napa. If we're going off statistics and we're going off experience, and they're both similar ages, so there's no argument that Wallace is on his way out and Napa's the new young gun coming in, because that just isn't true. Jared Wallace should be in this Queensland Maroons side. And those are the only 4 changes that realistically I'd be looking to make.
Yeah, well, we've had a fun episode today. Probably a bit of a long one too. Rambled on a bit. We've had, an interruption from a cat, which hopefully you couldn't hear too much of. I've had fun today. I hope you have too, watching at home. Social medias, as always, we're pointing at them right now. They're above us. Look, just before I hand over to you, Clarkey, I want to end things with a quote from a very wise man who once said, quite recently as well, who said, the New Zealand Warriors will beat the Sydney Roosters 50-0 in the 2019 NRL Grand Final. And I believe that man was Clarkey from Clarkey's NRL column, who I will be handing over to say goodbye right now.
I can't confirm or deny that quote. But what I would recommend is you definitely follow up above of whichever great man did say that quote. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next week for another great episode.